Multiples of various sorts.
Yeah, so I've just basically been working and
person tonight, and we have some returning people who haven't been here in a while, so let's go around and do names. What are people doing?
getting a couple chairs.
Oh, okay. Let's wait till everybody's.
Okay, what's the number?
Any more chairs?
Do you want? Yeah.
Do you have enough room?
Oh yeah, pretty good.
Okay, let's go around and do names. Let's start in the back there.
Hello, I'm Daniel.
Uma. Fang.
Mike. Eric.
Sophia.
Omni.
We have 2 more chairs.
Vinayak is here, so he's gone to get a chair, and so is Nikki.
So Vinayak and Nikki. All right. So we are in the second chapter, and we are moving through the section that's quite brief, that articulates just brief strokes the science of karma yoga. What is karma yoga? The yoga of action, literally. How we can use our activity in the world in a way that's conducive to our liberation. And the underlying theory is, because of our vasanas, the unconscious impressions left in the unconscious, we are impelled into action. We experience vasana pressure by being restless, by being unable to sit still, that our minds going, and then we're impelled into activity. We have desire. We get triggered and all those sorts of things. If the mind is very gross, meaning there's a lot of vasana pressure, and we attempt to meditate, many people find it very difficult. And they say, oh, meditation's not for me. And they quit. Or what they do is they meditate and they confuse manolaya with manonasha. These are technical terms. Laya is when the mind heads towards unconsciousness. Oh, yes, I meditated. I laid down on my bed, smoked a joint, had a glass of wine, put on some soft music. Yeah, it's not meditation. It's not meditation. Manonasha literally means the destruction of the mind. Better translation would be the ending of the flow of thoughts. So, what is karma yoga? We do not get freedom from vasana pressure by the cessation of activity. Krishna later on will say that person who gets rid of the objects of desire and allows the desire to remain behind is verily a hypocrite. You spend all your time sitting on your asana thinking about the stuff you're not getting. That's not meditation. Act is the first principle. How? According to your vasanas. Oh, I don't like my vasanas. I want different ones. Well, then you're going to just get more vasanas of a different kind. Do what you love. Love what you do. But number 3, do it in the yajna spirit of sacrifice. You have a new employer. You work for God. You're in sales. Who are you serving? God. You don't work for Google. You don't work for Meta. You work for God. Always. And the fourth element, which Krishna is going to talk a lot about tonight, renouncing our attachment to the fruits of action, what we call the karma phalam. Thy right is to work alone, never to the outcome. That belongs to God. Last element is our renunciation of our identification with a sense of agency. That's the most subtle. We're just going to put that on a shelf for now. We don't have time to go into it this evening. So does anyone remember what verse we're on? I think we're in the low 40s.
44.
44. Deepa, will you help us out, please?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay, Jim?
I can. Can everybody else?
Yeah.
All right.
Bhogeshwarya saktanam taya pahrita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadho na vidhiyate. For those who cling to joy and lordship, whose minds are drawn away by such teaching, are neither determinate and resolute, nor are they fit for steady meditation and samadhi.
Yes. So he's talking about exoterically those who are focused on the karma kanda section of the Vedas. Now, in the Western world, we think of God as divine, other, and what we want to do is do God's will, surrender ourselves to God. That's Ishvara Pranidhana in the yoga tradition, very important. But there is a section of the Vedas that has to do with the control of the gods through ritual. This was very common in the ancient world. You find it in Greek culture, you find it in Roman culture, you even find it in ancient Hebrew culture. Eric's over here. Were you telling me that you're Jewish? Mm-hmm. So prior to the destruction of the temple, in what was it, 70 AD? Yeah. So what did a Jew do to, if he had became ritually impure or had sinned? What did he do?
Probably go to the temple and get anointed or something.
Yeah. So you do a mikvah, you take a bath, you go buy an animal, and you hand it over to the priest, and they cook it. And then what happens? The smoke goes up to God. God goes, I love barbecue. You're okay. I'm not kidding. That's what that's how the ancients thought. So what do we Hindus do?
Same sacrifice.
Yeah. So most common one, so many people do, you're going to go into business. So you install a murti, a statue of Lakshmi, then what do? Call the pujari.
Yes.
Then what happens? He does the puja. You pay the pujari. Why do you have him do the puja? Make money. You propitiate Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. Or if you want to have children, you have the pujari do that particular sacrifice. Or if you want long life, you do this particular puja. So the devas, comes from the root div, which means to shine, are the presiding principles over the various realms of human activity, the forces of nature. Sometimes it will actually mean the sense organs. The closest thing we have to it in Western culture is in the Catholic Church and in the Episcopal or Anglican Church, what we call the cult of saints. Any of you have Catholic friends and they lose something and they go, oh, St. Anthony, please come round. I need to find my keys and I know they can't be found. Anybody ever hear that one?
Yes.
Or you pray to, you have a friend whose child has a disease. So they go light a candle to St. Jude, patron saint of lost causes. So that's the closest we have in the Western tradition, what we call the cult of saints. Each one of the saints is in charge of the department, see in heaven. Pray to them. Very similar to the Hindu idea of propitiating the saints. Now, this is for Eric. Anybody else here who might be Jewish? So Moses goes up on the mountain and he's confronting God. God says, take off your shoes because the place whereon you stand is holy ground. God speaking in the burning bush. And then Moses asks him a question. You remember, Eric, what the question is? What's your name?
Oh, yeah.
Who shall I say sent me? Now, this is because Moses was sneaky. Why did he want to know God's name? It's in the ancient world, if you knew the name of the God, you could control. Now, the purest Vedanta is what God answers. Help us out here, Eric. What does God answer?
Is it I am what I am?
What we call the tetragrammaton. IHVH. It's so sacred that Jews aren't even allowed to say it. Some people think it was pronounced as Yahweh. It's some form of I am. So the deepest mystical meaning, find out who I is. You'll find out who God is. That's the deep mysticism.
Sorry, Jim, what was God's answer?
I am that I am, or I am.
Okay.
And the name isn't Imes, like Imes dog food. It means find out who I is. The essence of I is what God is.
Okay.
It's the same
Thank
as
you.
the Vedanta,
Yeah.
but only those who have eyes to see can see that. So back to Karma Yoga. So we're learning to do Karma Yoga. The essence of what Krishna is driving at now is those people who are into Swarga. Who can tell me what Swarga means? We did this last week.
Heavens.
Heaven, yes, which is the state of consciousness when I get what I want, when I hit all the green lights of life. Oh, yes, I have a connection with God. I have a big house. I have a fancy car. I have my 2.3 children. Isn't that the average in this country? And a dog. But the problem with Swarga is it's only maintained by effort. You have to continue to accrue punya. Again, the outer meaning is do the ritual. The deeper meaning is perform the actions. You work for Google, right? How many hours a week do you work? 50?
Yeah, 50.
At least. That's called punya. That's what you got to do to get the smarga. You see that? You see that? What happens if you decide, yeah, I'm going to take 6 months off and travel? Oops, you slipped. Well, the mortgage, we can't pay the mortgage. How am I going to pay the car payments? Stuff like that. It's all based on continuing karma. All of it. So the essence of the verse, the ritual portion of the Vedas, which means the way most of us live, the materialists' view of the world, rooted in this idea, I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, the one with the most cash and prizes wins. This is what's going to make me happy. Now, yoga says, yes, it will. For a moment. Little tiny bit of joy. And And the more stuff you have, the more responsibility, more work you have to do. Later on, Krishna is going to say, no one is more fearful than a wealthy man. True story. So, this fellow that I was working with, living in San Diego, and he was working for a company, and the owners were a bit on the shady side, and they were all going off to do cocaine, and they were making some sort of a product that was on the verge of being illegal, but he was making a lot of money. He was a biochemist, and he just didn't like it. It felt dirty working for this company. I said, you don't need to work for that. You're smart, you're well educated, you've got a great CV. You can do something else. And he says, well, Jim, I just want to stay with it until I'm secure financially. I said to him, because this is the truth, you own 5 houses. What do you need to feel secure? And what we looked at, no amount of zeros in your paycheck, no amount of zeros in your stock portfolio will solve the problem of fear. Do you all get that? Mm-hmm. The only thing that solves the problem of fear is to give our life and its circumstances into the hands of God. Ishvara Pranidhana, trustful surrender to God. Or to put it another way, you need to be a sannyasi on the inside. We actually have a custom in India. You can wear orange underwear. Inside takes sannyas. That doesn't mean you don't own a house. you don't have a job, you don't have a 401k, you don't have a family with kids, etc., etc., etc. But inside, all of it is on loan from God. And you never know. God takes it back. Never know. So that doesn't mean we don't enjoy and we don't cherish, but no attachment. So all we get in life is the work. The fruit belongs to God. And we're going to start moving into the most important idea that Gita will teach us. Happiness, peace of mind, is an inside job. It is independent of the circumstances of the world. All right, any questions about this?
Jim, I have a question about surrender in this context. The surrender isn't so much what you do. The surrender comes really around, if you don't get what you want, can you make peace with it?
Yes. Okay. And to deeply understand that at best, it's just trinkets and baubles. Those of us who are studying Yoga Vasishta, we're in the story of Chudala. And she tells the story of the fellow who finds the Chintamani, which is the wish-fulfilling gem. Once again, this is mystic symbolism. This means your own self-nature. But he doesn't recognize it. So he ignores it and gets all attached to some worthless pieces of colored glass. And that's you and me. We ignore the great Chintamani, this Atmaramana, this capacity to revel in the self. The peace of mind that comes from detachment. Instead, people place things in conditions. Gimme, 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 gimme. The world is essentially, in the end, shunyata. It's empty. It's void. It is I that attribute the joy-giving or misery-producing qualities to it. In the West, we've got this classic example of the person who's hitting himself on the head with the hammer. Someone comes up and says, "Why are you doing that?" Because it feels so good when I stop. I want this. I want that. I really want it. Oh, I want it so badly. Oh, it hurts so bad. Oh, I'm so alone. I'm so alone. I'm so desperate. I don't have. Oh, I got a date. Wow. That's you and me. Then what do? It was a crappy date. More. We do it to ourselves. All right, next verse.
Tregunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvastho Niryogakshema Atmavan. The Vedas deal with the three attributes. Be you above these three attributes or gunas, O Arjuna. Free yourself from the pairs of opposites and ever remain in the sattva, freed from all thoughts of acquisition and preservation, and be established in the self.
So here again with one brief stroke, like a haiku, he is enumerating the whole teaching. We're going to get an entire chapter on the three gunas. Guna is a pun in Sanskrit. Guna means a quality, but it's also another word for rope. So the pun is the qualities of mind, we are tied up and bound by them. Ha 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 ha. That's the pun. What are the three gunas? Now, again, Gita draws on the language of the Sankhya philosophy. In the Sankhya philosophy, these three cosmic gunas, tamas, inactivity, darkness covering, lethargy, rajas, activity, projection, sattva, clarity, non-activity, stillness, peace. When these three cosmic gunas get out of balance, creation takes place. That's part of the cosmology of Sankhya philosophy. So Gita steps that down to you and me. So we see it microcosmically as the qualities of mind that each one of us has. So a tamasic mind state is where I head towards unconsciousness. Qualities of tamas are illusion, delusion, ignorance, inertia, depression, inactivity. I want to stay in bed and pull the covers over my head. I want to get unconscious, I want to smoke dope all the time or drink booze all the time. I want to go unconscious. And there are whole swaths of culture that live in a tamasic mind state. Rajas is where activity happens, where desire happens. Listen carefully. Rajas is where all our suffering happens. My ambition, my jealousy, my competitiveness, my anger because I'm not getting what I want. All those qualities are based in the activity of the rajasic mind, being restless, being discontent. Now, what do many people do with the suffering of rajas? They don't do it on TV anymore. But back in like the 50s and the 60s, if you saw a police show, you know, a crime drama, you always see the detective and he goes into the lieutenant's office and there's been some horrible thing. What does the lieutenant do? Because the guy's so upset, he opens the drawer of his desk and he pulls out the bottle of whiskey. You need a drink. What's going on? I'm having feelings. I'm upset. I'm in a rajasic, painful mind state. Let me get tamasic a little bit. And that's what many of us do. problem is tamas is always temporary. Who here has had just a terrible time? You've got maybe tragedy happening, relatives sick, terrible things at work, and you have a hard time trying to sleep. Don't you love deep sleep? And things are like that. What does deep sleep do? It takes you away from the rajas. Now, the third guna is sattva, which is the principle of clarity, where we see the self as it is, where we see the world as it is, where we are free from illusion and delusion. And the mind is peaceful, calm, content. Now, in the first part of this shloka, this verse, Krishna says, be you beyond the gunas. So the practice that's implied is, again, Sakshi Bhava, taking on the attitude of the witness. You want to live, as it were, in the higher intellect and watch the mind cycle through the three gunas. Let me give you an example of what's that like. Hanging out at home, all of a sudden a desire arises. I want pizza. North Beach Pizza, deliver me a pizza. 45 minutes. Oh my God. Okay. Rajas. Bing bong. Okay. Give you the money. Here's my pizza. That's what happens. Get the pizza. Never knife and fork. You always use your hand and fold. Oh man, is that good pizza? I think I'll have another. Eat half the pizza. Then what happens? Tamas. Ice cream. It starts all over again. So we watch the mind move through the cycle of guna. The mind emerges from tamas into rajas. I desire, I desire, I desire. Desire and object of desire become one. For a moment, the desiring is gone. If I'm conscious, that's a taste of my own self-nature. Then I go unconscious, and it starts all over again. So what Krishna is saying is, see if you can watch the cycle of Buddha and not necessarily be compelled to act on it. A desire arises. Those of you who've taken like a Vipassana retreat, what happens if a desire arises in your meditation?
Observe it.
And then what happens to it?
Eventually it kind of goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a created thing. It is by nature impermanent. It cannot last. So the yogi learns that just because you have a desire, it does not compel you into action. Most of us don't know that. We cannot tell the difference between a desire and a compulsion. If I have a desire, I have to ask. If I'm angry at you, it means I have to hit you or yell at you. Or if I'm fearful or anxious, I need to take medicine. So the yogi learns to allow feelings, thought structures to arise, and just don't do something. Stand there. Just don't do something. Sit there. So we break the unexamined habit. We understand just because the mind throws up a desire doesn't mean we have to act. It's just a thought. And it will pass. It will pass. All of us understand this to some degree. Those of us, for example, who are married or in a committed relationship. You may be married, but you're not dead. That doesn't mean you won't be attracted to other people, especially if you're young. But you learn, just because I find that person attractive doesn't mean I have to act on it. No, I have a commitment. I'm not going to do that. Most couples learn that principle in every aspect of life. So, Krishna says the way you get free from the tyranny of the addictive tendencies of mind, its compulsions, is get out, be the witness of them. And then, what is sattva? Sattva is another name for happiness. I call it the cosmic teeter-totter. The more attached I am, the more compulsive I am, the more driven I am, the less my peace, the more my anxiety, the more my fear, the more my anger. If I can let go and let God, accept life on life's terms, be in the now, be content, peace. As yogis, we want to learn that quiet mind that's free from the anxiety of compulsion. It's called the sattvic mind. A predominantly sattvic mind will bring you the happiest life. How do you do it? This is what yoga is about. Simple things in the beginning. First and foremost, try not to be a jerk. That goes a long way. Eat healthy. Don't pollute your system. Don't pollute your mind. Live a healthy life. Get enough exercise. Get enough sleep. Get enough leisure time. Pray. meditate, study some scripture, live a balanced life, and renounce your attachment to the fruits of action, which is the big one. Let it go. Any thoughts on this? Now, he will not go into depth into how to work with the gunas in this chapter. We just get a taste of it. We will go into it in depth at a future chapter. Next verse.
Yavanartha udapane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah. To the Brahmana who has known the self, all the Vedas are of so much use, as is a reservoir of water in a place where there is flood everywhere.
So, what do we mean by a Brahmana? Does this mean those who are born into the Brahmin caste? Not really. Krishna in the 4th chapter is going to say, I am the author of the fourfold caste according to guna and karma. And the word for caste in Sanskrit is varna. Varna literally means color. Actually, the English word caste, hue, also has connotations of color. You see.
Sounds like varnish too.
But does it have racial overtones to it? Yes. There are all sorts of philosophical and anthropological conversations going on into India. Were the Aryans people who migrated in? Was there an Aryan conquest? Were they indigenous to North India? I do not know. Back when I was studying world history and stuff like that, the assumption was the Aryans came into northern India and they brought the horse. They were from the area around the Caucasus. They were a lighter skinned people, and they came to politically dominate the indigenous peoples. And what has developed is a social pyramid. You've got the Brahmins, the priest class at the top, then the Kshatriyas, the warriors, the kings, the Vaishyas, the merchant class, and then the Shudras, the laborers. But even Gita will say, guna and karma, not janma. What does janma mean?
But
Birth. Nowhere in Gita does say what the Brits, I've been told, may have done this, where they equated jati and varna. Jati is your family's profession. See. But the point is, the caste you belong to is more, frankly, akin to the Marxist idea that each one of us contributes to society according to our abilities and receives according to our needs. So who are the Brahmanas? Those people who are attracted to the spiritual life or the religious life or the academic life. What they end up doing is being the holders of the cultural treasures. My friend Vishwadave, that last name Dave comes from Do Devi. What would that mean?
Knowledge of two Vedas.
Yeah, meaning before writing in the village, that family memorized 2 Vedas. Privadi, other names.
Three Vedas.
Yeah. Deshpande. What's that mean? What's Desh? It's a state.
Yes.
The pundit for the local state. He was the guy who was there who kept the local rituals, the local laws, what the various things were. So these are the ancient ideas of what a Brahmana is. And these are the people who are attracted to the spiritual life. Now, according to the modern understanding of Varna, of caste, I'm actually a Chandala. What's a Chandala? Dalit.
Untouchable.
You got it. Outcast, literally. I am outside the caste system. You have to be born a Hindu. But I've had this great attraction. So, according to Gita, this one's a Brahmana. And you may be born from a Brahmin family and have the sacred thread. But if you ignore the spiritual culture and you spend all your time money grubbing, and you think it's about having the biggest house in Fremont with all sorts of marble and fancy cars to impress your Indian friends. You're not a Brahmin, you're a Vaishya. So the Kshatriyas, those are those people whose job is to work for justice and to protect the country, the culture, people. It's a necessary function in society. The attorneys, the soldiers, the judges. Vaishyas, a necessary part of society. Those who are involved in the production and distribution of goods and services. Not less, just different. It's like saying, which is better, my nose or my thumb? Both are necessary for the body. They just do different functions. There are many people who like physical work. They like to build things. They like to work with their hands. Now, we're going to say something? Craftsman. Craftsman, yes. Yes, excellent. Yes. This is the deep understanding of what Shudras are. So the proper understanding of the caste system has to do with the way the ancients saw how society can organize itself in an intelligent way. And what you want to do is live true to your nature. Now, true story. I had a student for a long time whose family owned oil companies in the Midwest in Missouri. He had a master's degree in biochemistry. Good news is he was a trust fund kid. He had plenty of money. But what he loved doing was woodworking. He was a really skilled and beautiful craftsman. So even though he was born into this family of great wealth, he ended up getting, I think, a master's degree in bioengineering. He was supposed to go work in the oil industry. He rejected all that. You see, his swadharma, his calling, his vocation, his mission was something else. So in the end, Gita says, live true to your swadharma. And it's always a doing. It's not about a having. What do you enjoy doing? Now, when someone says to me, I don't like working, I don't want to have to work. Give me a sugar daddy or a sugar mommy. Let's see. I want to marry well, so I don't have to work. Let's see. That means we have denied our swadharma. We're out of touch with that intuitive, that creative impulse. And what Gita says, everyone has it. You have a place in the universe. You know how I know that? Because you're here. God doesn't make junk. All right, next verse.
Big one, next one.
What number are we on now?
47. Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhu ma te sangostva karmani. Thy right is to work only, but never to its fruits.
Yes.
Let the fruit of action be not thy motive, nor let thy attachment be to an action.
So, whatever we're doing, put your mind where your hands are working. Stay engaged in the work. Now, one of the things Krishna said earlier, if you follow this karma yoga, you have the greatest chance of success in life. The paradox, we nourish the gods and the gods nourish us. Back to our understanding of these presiding principles over the various forms of human endeavor. We'll get into this in chapters 3 and 4. If you focus on the work and let go of your attachment to the outcome, the paradox is you've got the greatest chance of success. Let me see if I can give an example of this. So, Amini is a speech therapist. And I assume, are you working with private students right now?
Both, yes.
Both. So if a kid comes in and they've got a challenge and your mind is, I wonder if it's a full fee parent and do I need to go over or under? If I go over, do I charge a little extra? What happens if your mind is on
You won't do good therapy.
Well, your mind won't be on the therapy.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Or Amini's a musician, so am I. If you're on, oh, I hope the audience likes it. Oh, I hope I'm as good as so-and-so. You know, I want to get a first prize or a second prize in the competition. Remember these conversations we had? What are you concerned with? Karma palam, the fruits of the action, which is very different. And you practice. Then when it's time for the performance, where's your heart? Where's your mind? On the music itself. And you know, we can feel it. You can go to a concert and someone can play all the right notes or sing all the right notes, be technically proficient. You can tell it if they're kind of observing themselves. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it okay? And it's two-dimensional. But someone who is lost in the music, then the Shakti just pours through. Athletes call it being in the zone. But your mind is not on the fruit of the action, the outcome. If you're programming and you're concerned about, is this going to get me a bonus? Is this an elegant enough program, or can I write it in a fancier way so that people will acknowledge me? And what's likely to happen?
Probably going to write okay program that just works better.
Yeah. But I have a very dear friend. I think his title is architect. I'm not quite sure what that means, but he's in IT. But he's just incredibly intuitive. And, you know, like they'll explain what it needs to do. And like in 15 minutes, he'll have the whole thing designed. It's just like, he's on the spectrum too. So I think there's a bit of a genius savant there, you know. But it's amazing. He's just like, he channels these things. Einstein was the same way. The mathematics came after he would have these deep insights. And it's any field of endeavor. If you keep your mind on what you're doing, your mind comes to a single point, and you stay out of fear, stay out of the results, and let the Lord sneak up on you from behind. Say, okay, here's your reward. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Yogastha kuru karmani sanga tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Perform action, O Dhananjaya, abandoning attachment, being steadfast in yoga and balanced in success and failure. Evenness of mind is called yoga.
Yes, yoga sta is what he said. Sta tishtati, which means to stand or be established. Being established in yoga. Now, Swamiji always used to say a single pointed mind is as good as no mind. In the yoga, Raja Yoga tradition, we would call this dharana. Who can tell us what dharana is?
Concentration.
Yes. Being able to bring the mind to a single point. So the mind is not diffused and irresolute. And again, he's making reference to this samadrishta, this equality of vision, this equality of mind. So are any of you scientists who actually, Vinayak, you're pretty much a scientist. You're an engineer, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
So with the widget that you're working on, how many times you've performed experiments and they failed? That's called science. So a good scientist has to be able to deal with failure. Siddha, asiddha. Evenness of mind. So you perform an experiment and it doesn't work. So what do you do next?
Try a different one.
After action report, perhaps. Try it. Or when you're learning to sing. How many times, Amini, did you have to do things like correct a whole technique? You and I had this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind sharing about it?
Yeah, no, of course. A singing technique?
Yeah.
Oh, like over and over again. You would do the same line, but like try to do it different ways until it sounds right. And then you lose it and then you have to go back again.
But didn't you go through a period where you had to really take a look at the way in which you've been fundamentally producing the tones?
Yes. Yes, I did. And so then you go back all of a sudden, even though you're very advanced, you go back to like the beginner exercises and you try all different ways to produce the right tone before you find it. And then you have to build it up again.
Yeah. So you worked very, very hard to learn how to not do anything.
Exactly.
That's what singing's about.
It's because it used to be effortful and then you have to relearn how to do it effortless.
Yes. That's a great lesson in life, by the way. One of the great things about singing, about sports, your body doesn't lie. Singing is great yoga. It's great yoga because your body doesn't lie. So, siddha, asiddha. Having this evenness of mind in success and failure. Basically, for most of us, life is a sine wave. I'm successful, oops. I'm successful, uh-oh. I'm successful, But how many of us don't attempt something because we're afraid of failure? Now, I always say strive for excellence, but perfectionism is a klesha. It's a dosha. Klesha means an affliction. Dosha here means like a character defect. If I'm a perfectionist, then I get all upset if I don't do it by my internal idea of perfection. In singing, back there, someone tries to sing a phrase or a song and they can't do it well the first time and they quit. How many times have you seen that happen? Or with anything else in life? So I'm going to give you a very important slogan. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. If it's really challenging and you're doing it as a beginner, guess what? You're going to make mistakes. And you keep at it. But the perfectionist, I can't do it perfectly the first time, I give it up, I quit. And that's a way to have a very small life. So the yogi is willing to make mistakes, willing to fail, willing to work at it. Equality of mind in siddha, asiddha, success and failure, accomplishment and not so accomplished. So I will share with you one of my favorite and most powerful prayers. Oops. Make friends with oops. What's going on?
I unplugged my charger because I have to leave now. Sorry.
All right. All right, let's do one more.
Durena yavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddho sharanaman vichcha kripanam phalahitava. Far lower than the yoga of wisdom is action, O Dhananjaya. Seek thou refuge in wisdom. Wretched are they whose motive is the fruit.
So again, throughout the entire text, our poet Vyasa is redefining this word yoga. Prior to the writing of Gita, yoga was pretty much seen as just the eightfold essences of Raja Yoga. You know, the yamas, asana, pranayama, etc., all that sort of stuff. He makes the word have a much broader meaning here. And now he, with one verse, touches what he's going to cover later. What is the relationship between karma yoga and the deeper flights in meditation? So after chapter 2, we're going to go into chapters 3, 4, and 5, which is an in-depth look at karma yoga. After we've got that pretty much handled, we get to chapter 6, which is the yoga of meditation. Why? Wisdom. Here he calls it buddhi yoga. See the little dude there? We call him the Buddha. Buddha is when the buddhi becomes Buddha, when the subtle intellect is awake. We wake up to our essential nature. This is called wisdom. Buddhi yoga. This is superior to action. Does that mean not to? Why are you teaching us to do karma yoga then, Krishna? Because it is a powerful preparatory exercise, which most of us need and neglect. here he's saying it culminates in this Buddhi Yoga. What does he mean there? Ultimate freedom comes from what we call in the scriptures self-realization. Atma Vidya, knowledge of my own true nature. This is not just book learning. We call that paroksha jnana, indirect knowledge. We mean direct experience, aparoksha jnana. This, everything shifts. That's where we're headed to. All right, it's 8 o'clock. What verse are we on for next week?
We'll be starting at 50.
All right. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all. And thank you, Deepa. Welcome home.
Thank you, Jim. I hope to see you next week. Take care. Bye.
Your voice sounds better. See, Gita chanting will do that.
I know. Thank you. Bye.